Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another cheap versus not so much for you. This is the second installment. I'm sorry, I meant to do a lot more of these quicker, but stuff just keeps coming in. But we're bringing it back today. In these reviews, I do the same comparison that I do for my Battles to the Death, but instead of taking two fairly equally priced, equal purpose knives, I find two knives that are equal purpose and very despairing in price, taking an inexpensive option versus an expensive option. And these two struck me. I think these are going to be two very good ones to do. I have a few more lined up whenever I get time to record them. But today, we have the Real Steel G5 Metamorph G2 versus the Boost Blade Smoke TM1. $60 versus $220. And not only $220, very hard to get your hands on. There are several different versions of the smoke that have come out. There is an S35 version. This is the titanium M390 one, hence titanium, M for M390, 1 for first version. That's the name of this one. There was also a CM one that was sold through Blade HQ. And there's been an S35 version, stuff like that. But when they come out, they go like that, and they make them, kind of seems like whenever they feel like it. I'm not really sure I'm sure there's some more complicated way they reason it, but they just come out when they come out, and you got to jump on them. Boost is pretty good about warning you ahead of time, but it took me almost a year to get this. We'll talk a lot more about that and when we get to the end. The Metamorph, on the other hand, you can just go buy $60 at most of your knife retailers. As I said, this is the G2 version. Difference is being it has these milled, this kind of milled on the aluminum scales, and it's got a deep carry pocket clip. Other than that, pretty much the same as the original. You are getting M390 and titanium frame lock on the smoke, and you are getting a 14C28N and aluminum handles, as I said, on the Real Steel. Both front flippers, both very thin, kind of stabby looking knives. Both very similar in size and everything. And yeah, I think this is just going to be a really cool little comparison thing. I really like them both a lot. These are both my knives. I don't intend on getting rid of either of them, so that we'll put that little caveat in there as we go along here. And just to think about that as we go along. So how does this work? As I said, pretty much the same as one of our usual Battles to the Death with one change. Same categories. We have design and aesthetics. We have quality. We have blade. We have ergonomics, deployment, carry, and value. And then at the end, we're going to add up the scores. Everybody gets 1 point except for the value category. That's 2 points in these to kind of make it fair, because obviously in a lot of these, the cheaper knives wouldn't stand a chance. And we're talking about value here. That's the whole point of this, is it worth spending so much more on the better option? So here we go. Let's do some stats before we get too much farther. Let's start out with the Metamorph. You have an overall length of 8.1 inches, blade length of 3.5 inches, blade thickness pretty thin at 0.12 inches, handle thickness of 0.44 inches, and a weight of 2.6 ounces. Now we will bring out the smoke. You have an overall length of dead on 8 inches, blade length 3.5 inches. You have a blade thickness quite a bit thicker at 0.16 inches, and a handle thickness of 0.45 inches, and a weight of 2.85 ounces. So a little thicker, a little heavier on the smoke. Now, let's get into the categories. First, design and aesthetic. I really went back and forth on this one, I gotta be honest. They're different, for sure. They both look very modern, completely. And I was completely willing to give it to the smoke. I think in open form, I think the smoke does look a little bit better. But when you close them, smoke still looks good, don't get me wrong. But I just love the shape and the look of the Metamorph when it's closed. This is an O-Stop Hell design, by the way. Great designer. And it just becomes so slim and just simple. And I love it for its simplicity. The smoke is undoubtedly a very good looking knife, but I couldn't, and this is definitely the most subjective category, but I'm going to call it a tie. I think it's just kind of personal taste, which one you like better as far as that goes. Now, as far as quality goes, the Boost is made by We. The Real Steel's made by Real Steel or whoever they contract out to make their stuff. Yeah, It's weak quality, man. And yes, this is hard to obtain, but still, it's for $220. It's actually a pretty good price. It's the typical weak quality. There's just so many really cool little details in here that are just so well done. Everything's nice and chamfered off. You know, I love this. I love the pivot, the way they milled the pivot out there. There's a lot of really good details on this. Very nice looking pocket clip. The back spacer's really well done. I got to give it in quality to the Boost, even considering the price. There's nothing wrong with the real steel. I haven't had any problems. You know, blade centering's good, the lockup's good, all that stuff. All the stuff you'd look for is excellent for a $60 knife, but this is really excellent for a $220 knife. So, got to give the quality to the Boost. Now, blade. Yeah, this one's going to be maybe a bit of a surprise. I think you guys know that I like 14C 28N steel. You know, this is M390. Is M390 better? Hells yeah, M390 is a lot better steel than 14C 28N, but for $60, 14C 28N is an excellent steel, and they're both pretty thin behind the edge. I both measured about 18, 19 thousandths behind the edge. Maybe the real steel was very, very slightly thinner behind the edge, but you know, they got pretty similar tips. You know, that I mean, this is thicker blade stock, but once it comes down to the tip, they both look like they would have very spindly, horrible, snap it off in a second tips, and neither of them do. Especially the real steel looks like it would, but it doesn't. But, you know, I gotta say, blade-wise, as far as which one I prefer to actually cut things with, it's gonna be the real steel. It's so much thinner blade stock, same thickness behind the edge. They both came pretty sharp, but the real steel came exceptionally sharp. It's just, this thing, I used to have a blue one of these, of the original version, and I called it my lightsaber because it was blue, and it was so blue you could almost hear it. That's another thing in the aesthetics about this. Yeah, these do come in colors. The smoke comes in colors too whenever they come out, so that's a wash. I didn't mention that earlier, but yeah, this is just a laser. Well, this is a pretty good cutter, but the real steel is a laser. So got to give the win in the blade category to the real steel. Ergonomics. Well, this is the Mark II. And one of the reasons why they came out with the Mark II was the original had completely slick sides, and people complained a lot about it slipping in their hand. This helps a whole lot. I never really had a problem with it slipping in my hand that much, really. The kind of stuff that I was using it for, it was never an issue for me. This does help a little bit. I don't think it's going to help dramatically. So they have teased on their Instagram the last couple weeks, and I think I have one in the mail. I still don't know what it is, but there is another version coming out with some different handle material, but I believe that's a dealer exclusive. It sounded like from what they were saying. I'm assuming it's probably G10, but we'll see. I don't know who's going to be carrying those, but I think they have one on the way to me. They're sending me a few things, and I think that's one of them. But with this aluminum, the one that you can widely get, yeah, I think people are still going to complain about the slipping. Again, not an issue for me, but I think people complain about it. The smoke just feels a little bit better in hand, and it's got enough contour. There's no worry about it slipping around. Jimping is pretty even on them. But Ergos, I got to say, got to give it to the smoke on that. I think the smoke is just, it feels a little better in hand, and it ain't going anywhere. So got to give it to the smoke. Now for the carry. Now let's bring out Yield Wranglers for this one. We'll start out with the real steel. Nice deep carry pocket clip, another change on this G2 version. Very welcome, because this is very much a kind of gentlemanly knife, especially in this gray color. And, you know, it completely disappears in the pocket. No flipper tab sticking out because it's a front flipper. Super easy to get your hand by. Very light, you know, 2.6 ounces. Very lightweight. It's great tension on the pocket clip too. Slides in and out easy. It carries awesome. The smoke doesn't carry too bad, but it doesn't have a deep carry clip, and a little bit more is going to be sticking out. It's a little heavier. That doesn't matter. 0.2 of an ounce. No one's going to notice that. It's just a little wider. Both are super slim. This is super nitpicky, but it is a little bit wider when you try to put your hand past in the pocket. And you know, occasionally when my hand's coming out, I can feel that back spacer, the jimping right here, just a little bit. So both carry very well, but I have to say objectively that the real steel carries better. Now, as far as deployment goes, that's what these things are all about. They're front flippers, right? Like, they're fun let's be honest. Is there really a purpose for the front flipper? I guess that, you don't have a flipper tab sticking out in your pocket. But other than that, the primary purpose of them is they're just cool and they're fun to play with. Which one's better here? I'm just going to come out and say it, and I can't believe that I am. I'm going to call it a tie because the Real Steel is that it's really good. The Metamorph is that good. The only other budget front flipper that comes close just came out is the Civivi McKenna, and I actually have it here, so I'll bring it out. But this is a much smaller knife and doesn't really compare to these two. But it's just great action. It runs on roller bearings, so it drops like a guillotine. It's just fantastic. It's the action on these, and it's pretty easy to open still. It's not a front flipper that's going to take you a long time to learn. Now, the Boost is easier to open. Just the way they designed this flipper tab is perfect. And it's just, it'll take you 2 minutes, 3 or 4 flips, and you've got it down. It's not difficult at all. It's not quite as drop shutty as the Real Steel is, but it has a very smooth feel. This has a very smooth feel too, but it also has that kind of, I don't know, it just moves so fast. It doesn't feel quite as smooth as this. It's hard to define. It's almost too quick, where this does just have, if you're just moving it, like this, you can just feel that ceramic ball bearing, nice smoothness. The roller bearings feel smooth, but I don't know, it's just not the same. I don't know, it's just not the same. This has more of that liquidy, hydraulic-y kind of feel, but still drops well, and it's a little easier to open. So I would say this opens a little easier. This falls shut a little better. It winds up being a wash in the end. Value. Here we go. This is the one that's going to matter. Because right now we're at, 2-2 with 2 ties. So this is definitely the tiebreaker. And value-wise, this is going to take some explanation. I think this is a really good value for $220. I think this is a really good value for $60. But I have to give it to the Real Steel because, excuse my voice, because you can get them. The Boost is just so hard to get it took me a year to get this. Just waiting for them to come out, kept watching, kept looking on the secondary market where people were upcharging them a ton. So yeah, I say this knife is $220, but if you want to go buy one on the secondary right now, you're going to find a lot of them that are a lot more than that. You're going to find some that are priced correctly, but a lot of them are speculators that'll jack them up. So you almost can't consider this a $220 knife. It's $220 if you get lucky and happen to see that they're putting them out. If you buy them on the secondary, they're often more than that. So if this was just a regular production knife, I'd give it to the Smoke, but it isn't. You can't really, even though it's made by We, it's not custom or anything, but they come out in bursts. Gotta give it to the Metamorph for the value, which means, that's the winner. And I've said that before. I think I've said before on live shows and stuff. People ask about front flippers, say they're curious about front flippers. I say, go get a Metamorph. They're $60. They're not too hard to learn. They have great action, really nice blade. They carry very well. They look cool. There's really hardly anything to dislike about them. I will give one little warning. If you're just not paying attention and you get the titanium Metamorph, it is not a front flipper. The titanium Metamorph that I've seen so far is just a regular flipper. I don't know if the front flipper one is out yet. I've heard it's coming, but I haven't seen that yet. I would probably jump on one if I saw one. Somebody posted a link down in the comments if there's a titanium one available, but then that one wouldn't be applicable to this test anyway, so we're doing cheap versus not so much. And there's also a fixed blade version. They're all in on the Metamorph, basically, is what I'm saying at Real Steel, so you'll see more versions of this. But yeah, go grab a G5 if you are curious about front flippers. It's one of the best budget front flippers out there. I can't believe I'm saying one of the now because the McKenna's out, but budget front flippers weren't even a thing, a couple years ago. But yeah, got to give the win to the Real Steel, but the Boost is excellent. And the Boost does have that cachet of, if you pull it out in front of knife nerds, you got a Boost. Everybody's going to be like, oh, cool, it's a Boost. Probably they're going to ask you how long it would take you to get that. But it's one of those kind of knives. But I really hope you guys have enjoyed this and found it informative. I've been Brian. Have a good one.